the Upfront Toronto podcast.
Welcome, everyone, and welcome to Upfront Toronto, conversations with people that move the city forward. I'm really happy to introduce Peter Neal of the famous Neal Brothers, and Liza is with us as usual.
Hello, everyone.
Peter is a co-founder of Neal Brothers. They've been existing or been around for about 30 years, opening in the late 80s. They cover so many areas of work. They have amazing salsa, which is my favorite. And I honestly go to different stores to get it. Like if my regular store doesn't carry it, I go and get it. They have amazing chips, tortilla chips. They have now non-alcoholic beers. I was surprised to see they're now making coffee, men's underwear with a specific that I haven't checked yet, but with proceeds going to good causes, biodegradable straws and plastic. So we have so much to talk about. And for those of you who don't know, they're one of the biggest distributors in the East Coast. And also for Uni, they have a book and gone through a really interesting rebrand not long ago. Welcome, Peter. If I've missed anything, please jump in, and I'd love to hear what else I missed.
No, Elon, you nailed it all. In fact, it's funny. There's a whole common thread of food in there, and then someone mentions the fact that we're launching men's underwear, and they say, "Geez, you really do have a lot of balls in the air." Now, I think it's going to be more balls in the underwear, but anyway, we do have a lot going on. Yes. No, thank you for covering it all.
Well, I really appreciate it. That we kind of know each other because we're in a similar industry. We're both in food. And I'll tell you this, the first time, I don't know if I saw you or your brother, but it was about 30 years ago. It was the early 90s. And I worked as a lowly assistant manager at Canada's Wonderland. I was looking to get experience in restaurants, and I was accepted as an assistant manager. I was, I think, 22 or 3, and my boss was an 18-year-old or a 17-year-old. So I had lots to learn from her, and she was really good. But I think during the end of the year, one of you guys worked there, and you came to say hello to Cathy, who was the responsible for the food department. She was like the smallest Asian woman with a sailor's mouth. Like everybody was terrified of her. And
yeah, she was ferocious.
Yeah. And you came to the restaurant that I worked at, Southside Grill, and came and said hello. And people were, oh, he just started a salsa company, and we're all very envious of you, not knowing you yet. Do you remember that day?
I remember, and I think one of the things that I remember most about that meeting, I can't believe you were there. I did not know this, but I'd known her so well because my brother ran half of the park's food. Actually, he was area manager. And Cathy and I had a friendship, and I knew what a ferocious individual and the fear that she struck into people. But I always find a hug disarms, most of that. So she wasn't expecting it. She doesn't like hugs. I planted a big one around her that day, and I think everyone looked around and go, "Who is this guy?" I think I should try salsa, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Was that the first time you met her?
No.
Okay.
But I did know that she wasn't a warm and fuzzy person, and I always like to push that with her. So.
She almost ripped my head off once because a tablecloth had a wrinkle in it for a certain event, and ever since I'll never serve on a wrinkled tablecloth. So I thank her for that. So shout out, and she was great. Again, all that aside.
No, she was. And you know what? My brother, partner, best buddy, Chris Neal worked with Cathy for years, and I know that. A lot of today of some of those really good reminders and those good traits, those don't leave a wrinkle. We're burned into Chris as well. So you both come by it honestly through an amazing human being like Cathy King.
Yeah, the next year I was also area manager within the food department. So I guess the wrinkled cloths she didn't remember for long enough, and she. I did promote me to that, but it gave me an amazing experience within the food industry.
Yeah, I'm sure Rodney Figa helped at some point in time as well.
Yeah, no, and they were generous. I even used their pizza oven to make pitas at the time. Like I didn't know I needed a conveyor oven, and how do I get a hold of a conveyor oven, and they had one in the front there of the park. And I said, can I use it once you close? And she said, yeah, sure, whatever. Just don't bother me. And it was great. It was a really good experience to make dough. And that's so I think that was even the first commercial pitas we made.
What a great story going back that far. And you know what? I would have used that same pizza machine because I worked at the pizza place for one summer.
Oh, come on. That's
Yeah,
hilarious.
I also worked the age and weight game. So don't try me on that one.
I'll be sucking in my stomach for this whole talk. So, if I lose air, you know why.
You're safe with me, buddy.
So my Botox may take away a few years. So I'll throw you off with that.
I was going to ask. No. Okay.
So, like you guys started a business. It's, you read your site. It's a beautiful site. I resonate with your values. You started making croutons. I think a lot of people start wanting to make croutons because they're so easy to make. How did it start? Do you remember making the croutons? Who was your first customer? How did you know you have something in your hands?
Yeah, it's funny. I was, excuse me. I was at school in the Eastern Townships of Quebec, and we would often make runs down into New England. And on some of these trips back with a boatload or a carload of buddies, we would pick up road snacks. And in the mid 80s, someone picked up a bag of Cape Cod potato chips, and that was before Miss Vicky's. And literally, we thought, I did some research. I thought these are so good, and these are so different than what the market has right now. Everything was, large CPG companies. And here was this little cottage industry in Cape Cod, which I remembered as a kid. We used to camp there with my mom and dad. And I thought, someone's doing something interesting and different. I love food. So the original idea was to make potato chips until we realized Miss Vicky had a really, really super good product and a great story that we couldn't come close to. So we went home and sort of racked our brains. We saw that people are starting to eat more salads and eat more healthy, and salad dressings like Renee's, were different than what was packaged on the shelf in the ambient section of the store. They should have a deli, cold, fresh salad dressing. We thought, well, there's no one doing something to match up with all of that. The salad isn't complete without a good homemade crouton. We would always make our own at home for that reason. So we thought maybe there'd be other people who were in that boat. And obviously the entry into that business, the threshold's not very high.
You have an oven and a tray.
Yeah. So we started making the mom's kitchen until Dad got tired of that coming home. I think that lasted 3 days. And we found a local baker in Aurora who said, boys, I'm not using the ovens at night. Go ahead. So my brother and I did the graveyard shift making croutons. And the first few stores were local in Aurora, a couple in Toronto, and within a week, we had repeat orders, and we realized we had a business on our hands, and we both loved working together. We had a lot of fun doing it. It was years and years of hardship and pain, as you can imagine. We never ever thought we would. I guess we questioned ourselves a lot for 7 or 8 years, or even 10 years. Was this ever going to pay the bills? Thank goodness we had wives or partners at the time who did have the ability to pay the bills. So we were the bread cutter, not the breadwinner.
So you guys, it's interesting because we started with we jumped to the storefront, and so we started with retail, but keep having some kind of wholesale idea in mind. And I think that was, even though it was a higher fence to like a harder business to get in, because we needed to borrow $100,000 and we invested 50,000 of our parents' money, which they didn't have. But the moment we established retail sales, that allowed us to kind of do the jump into wholesale a little more easily. That's interesting to hear. And then when did the chips come in? Like, how did you try and move into there? And then how did you go into wholesale also? Because I understand how you went to wholesale once you distribute your own products, and then you say, what else can I put on my truck? How did it go? How about?
Yeah, we realized pretty quickly we didn't have the margin built in order to hire a distributor. And quite frankly, I don't think there's a lot of distributors dying for a homemade crouton from these two bozos in Aurora. So we, by default, as often happens, I mean, you guys have had some of those curves as well, and we all have in business, right? And we thought, well, we better drive these to more and more stores ourselves. And it was a great way to learn the business. It was a great way to meet the customer. But quickly realized after about a year that driving Croutons around isn't going to pay the bills. So
there's a common theme here I'm feeling.
Yeah, and so we needed to add some product, and we were actually, I think it was Chris leafing through Western Grocer magazine and one other publication at the time. You can imagine we were all pre-electronic and that amazing ability to search and Google, et cetera, and figure out what's happening, what's trending. But we realized that there was this demand for increasing awareness for Mexican foods. It wasn't just the ethnic food section of the store. I still can't, boggles my mind to think that Mexican foods were in this little spot in the store called ethnic, and they're awful tortilla chips back in the day. They're industrial grade cardboard things. So there was a Mexican family that we got to know, and they were producing fresh ground tortilla chips. And like biting into that was like biting into Cape Cod chips for the first time. I was like, oh, this is what potato chips or real tortilla chips can taste like, right? And we worked with the family, and they weren't good at marketing and sales, and we thought we were, and they believed in us, and we put our label on it. And our first product was an organic blue corn chip, and
so it's been organic blue corn from the beginning.
From the very beginning, and that's kind of quasi-organic because we were buying from farmers who couldn't certify because as you know, we didn't have a certification for almost 30 years later in Ontario. So. But Chris had a route. He drove around a truck in Toronto. I drove a truck outside of the city, and he would take his blue corn chips to some of those little maybe hipper shops at the time. And not to say the 905 is not hip, but at the time they just we had markets in the city who grasped it really quickly. We had markets outside of the city, like in Aurora. I would walk in with my blue corn chips. They say, well, what did you dye them with? Or are these the burned ones? Or and so it was a bit of an elephant to push up the hill. But when people tried it, understood it, and understood what we were trying to do by really pushing the envelope around organics, we believed in it. We believed in products with better ingredients. Because at the time, the stores were filled with, either back in the day, Buceteri's and Bruno's and Summerhill Market. Some of these shops were really filled with whatever they could get their hands on. And that was a lot of US product and some Canadian local product. But there were, all sorts of additives and tons of sugar and things that we didn't believe were necessary to make a product taste good. And we grew up with a garden with my mom, gardening and bringing tomatoes and carrots and onions and doing those kinds of things. And we had an understanding of what good food meant and how it worked so much better with our body and our mind. And we also broke bread together every night as a family, at least 6 nights a week. I think the odd night we might have a hockey practice or baseball or soccer practice. But
I'm going to jump from there just because it's really, you mentioned the breaking bread together, and I find you work with your brother and how you guys seem to have a good rapport and a good thing going. I work with my brother too. We're now kind of taking a break from that after 25 years. But one of the things that really maintained our friendship and relationship were Friday night dinners. So for us, it wasn't 6 nights a week. It was more once a week, but it was the whole family. And that gathering kind of always reminded us that family is more important, that for us, this is more important than money. And even though we had definitely had disagreements, that getting together was like such a good reminder of that. Did that work for you guys in the same way?
Yeah, it mattered for us because it was a place and a time where, we didn't have devices back in the day, but it was certainly a time when you were more mindful and present with those around you. And I'm not sure if your background's Jewish, but when I look around some of my best buddies, and
yes, it is.
One of the things I've always been so envious. Maybe that's not the right word, but of their Shabbat dinners.
So that's the dinner I'm talking about.
Yeah, they're special, right? And I know it took me a while. I'd call my friends up to do something on a Friday night or have a dinner, and I'd have to bang my head against the wall. Oh, right, no, that's their special night, and that was sacred to them, and it did ensure that there was family together,
Mhm.
sharing and being congruent and being vulnerable and being open with each other, and not every family, not every religious background, I guess understands that and
Well,
practices
for us,
that.
it
But
was more bickering and complaints, but that's a different story.
no, we had our share of those for sure. But
Those
it was important. It's important to do that, to grow, right? There's got to be all the good, bad, and the ugly, right?
It is fantastic. Although, yeah, the Shabbat dinners, I was the first one to volunteer to wash the dishes because I just wanted to get away from the table and I wanted peace and quiet. But the good thing is with our kids, we would force them. Friday night, you don't go out. You don't, if you want, go out later. If you, there's that kind of time carved in for family, no matter what. COVID has affected it a little the past year, where so we can't get 18 people together, but the core family does still. So
That's good. Well, in our family, it was, Sunday was church, and we grew up, very involved with our local churches. And so Sunday night dinner was just a natural. And if we missed 3-4 nights a week as we got older, Sunday night dinner still happened. And our friends loved being there. Our friends, there's always one or two or sometimes three spots at the dinner table. As long as my dad was holding court and being able to tell stories and jokes, anyone was acceptable, especially those who laughed harder for him.
They got invited back, did they?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. In fact, my dad tells incredible old Jewish men telling jokes. Kind of. I think my dad secretly always wished he was Jewish, but he has this great accent and these great stories. They're also fun. And any of my Jewish buddies who wanted to come by always got a good laugh out of those.
So you grew, and you've created on one hand a brand. So by the way, I think you're pretty good with marketing because you chose Neal Brothers rather than the Bozo Brothers, and I think that works better.
Good, I like that.
Good choice. And now then you started distributing food for others. You mentioned something that is like really resonates with me, and I know you had an issue with some depression last year because of you mentioned, or from an article that I read, of losing a big customer of yours who was I don't know 45% of your customers within distribution. I so resonate with that, and I'll let you give you the floor in one sec, but the stresses I had personally, and it's funny, it's very individual dependent, I guess. The roller coaster of stresses that I went personally through the years, through 25 years, I can't imagine. There was even a year where I was so stressed. It was hard for me to drive by a supermarket, and supermarkets were our customers. I just wanted to stay in the house. Every time I drove, it's like I felt an energy force from the supermarket pushing me away from it. And for a year, I managed to conceal it. I was, nobody noticed it, but I stayed home a lot. And I don't know what happened after that year. I think I went to a thing named Landmark, which helped me a lot. And it was kind of to reframe things. And I went with a stress level of 9.5 out of 10. So the Friday morning. And I knew if I don't do something about this, I'm going to either have a health issue or a mental issue or health, or they're both health. I knew it. And thankfully, the kind of the reprogramming or that work that on self, either from that weekend alone, brought me from, I'd say 9.5. And then Monday, I came out at a 5, which was like a miracle. And thank God that I did that. Thank God, because how often do we invest time in ourselves? We don't. We like shoes, cars, houses, pools, I don't know what, but ourselves, on ourselves. And that saved, I think it saved me. And actually it saved me in other realms too. It clicked the sense of authenticity for me. And a few years later, I came out to my family, and that's a whole different story. But that's another story. But there was definitely an element of stress, so much stress. And so thank you for raising it and talking about it and sharing it with people, because I think it's way more common, and so many of us hide it. And some of us manage to get out of it alone, and some of us not. And it's really important to talk about it.
Well, I'm glad you're sharing. I'm glad you've shared. And, you and I have had some conversations leading up to today, and it's powerful. You found a way to get some time, invest, as you said, some time, energy, money in yourself, and it allowed you to figure out who you really were and what you really wanted out of the rest of your life. And that's powerful, brother. That's amazing. It's a huge, huge, huge vulnerability to share.
Thank you. Yeah, it is. Today I realized that these vulnerability, you always hear the statements, your biggest vulnerability is your biggest potential or is your biggest treasure. And you don't get it until you get it. You don't get it until you walk through that mile or two or walk in those shoes. And I think it puts things in perspective a lot. It's the biggest fear was for people to know. Now people know and nothing happened. Some things happen, but you just get through them. You know what was the biggest thing, Pete? It's my ex. We really have a good relationship. And I don't want this to be about me, but I have to share it. And I want you to share it. Liza, you take control after this. So, because I can go. So the biggest thing was after we separated and I came out and you never stop coming out, by the way, because people, I'm not wearing a flag or anything. But we lived in Thornhill and all of Thornhill talked about it for, 2 weeks. And then you realize after 2-3 weeks, they get bored about saying the same thing. And then they are off to the next thing. So it's not such a big deal. But up until then, we were the perfect family. So we had 3, kids, we were successful, we looked okay, went on everything. We were the perfect family. And so was everyone around us. And about a year after, my ex and I were talking, and it was hard on her and it was hard on me, but on her, I initiated it, obviously. She said, Alon, I'm shocked because most of my friends now suddenly are talking about personal stuff. And up until then, they were kind of all seemed perfect and they didn't share these things with me. Yeah. And after what we went through, and now we're not the so-called perfect family, even though I think we still are in a sense. Suddenly people are feeling comfortable to open up to her, and she's hearing all this shit, man. And it's why, that wasn't the intention to start with, but at least it's good that they're opening up.
Yeah, you've created a pathway.
Are you finding the same? Are people confiding in you and opening up?
Yeah, 100%. For the first couple of months of my depression, I slinked around my neighborhood. I was, for 20 years, I was a proud guy and Mr. Happy and waved to everybody and talked to everybody in our neighborhood. And then suddenly I was so dark and scared and embarrassed and ashamed. I would go out only at night. I'd have my head down and I would avoid anybody. And partly because I'm sure subconsciously, like you were saying, I was supposed to be viewed as, this perfect life and successful entrepreneur and 3 great girls and amazing wife. And, you got the nice house and the car and all that. And you look around and think everyone's in the same boat as well. There's 1 or 2 that, are crazy or screwed up or whatever, realize, well, I'm one of those as well. And then walking through the neighborhood after that, as I was walking out of, literally mentally and metaphorically walking out of what I had gone through, I would walk occasionally with one of my girls, and I'd just say, behind almost every door, there's something. It's all relative, and whatever that challenge is in that home, it is throwing them off what they would normally have expected to, wake up to a great day and a perfect life, and something has challenged somebody at some point in time, and someone's suffering or hurting, and so there is pain and suffering and challenge behind every door. We do put on these metaphorical masks, don't we? So
yeah, humans are such judgy creatures, myself included, but going through difficult experiences do teach you to hold judgment a little. It still happens, but you never know the person you're talking to. You never bloody know. And I catch myself with an automatic judgment, and no, you never know. Don't that. And another thing is that I've taken from this is, I used to walk around and, someone who's nice to me, I'd smile to them because, oh, they're nice to me. And somebody who's generous to me, I'd be generous with them, et cetera, et cetera. But then I caught myself and I realized I'm reacting to everyone around, and somebody's an asshole to me. So there is no way I'd be nice to them. They're assholes. And then I forget, like, what is my face with them, right? And I can control that, but I'm reactive the whole time. And now, like, I'm trying to be cognizant about it, not always successfully, but I'll try and be generous and good and happy and just generous and with some grace, I'd say. I like the word grace a lot, and for them to react to me, not the other way around. And if they're assholes the first and second time, that's okay. But you know what? The third time, something changes most times. And if it doesn't, that's okay also. But we forget how people react to us. We're always in our head.
Yeah. And then we don't know anything about them and what happened to them that day or what they're going through, right?
Yeah.
What was the catalyst for you, Pete? Like, what I read in this article that you were at this funeral, but what if it's not too personal to share, but what was it that you feel kind of started the depression?
Yeah, and Elan, you referenced a business that we helped to build, and that was really, that was what it was, and it was a business thing, and these things happen. No judgment against them, but and I appreciate you asking that, Liza, because there was probably a myriad of things for sure, 5, 6, 7 things. We'd been working hard with our daughter who'd been in a addiction and mental health residential program, and we'd been going through what they call a parallel process. It's called Pine River Institute in Shelburne, and it's one of a kind in Canada. And we had to invest a lot of time and energy ourselves, my wife and I. So we were 30 hours of therapy a month as well. And I was doing that, and I hadn't changed any of my life at the time. I was still racing around trying to build a business. We got into a cannabis venture, which we've since exited. But I had a lot on my plate, from business and personal. And I can remember in the back of my head, my wife or other people, and I'd hear it, if we were out for dinner, someone would say, how's Peter keep going? And I remember thinking, I would hear this, and I'd remind myself I was literally racing through an airport to get somewhere, or through a food show, Elan, or or sitting down with whatever was consuming me at the time, and thinking, I do keep going because I can't stop, and I am invincible, and I've got the power. I can do it. So really, I took about a month off in August of that year. We rented a cottage, and everything started. It was like, the inertia sort of stopped, and everything started to catch up, and I had time to ruminate and think about what I had done, where I was going, what life meant, what's happening to our daughter coming back from this institution within months of that time. And then I had these premonitions. I had 2 premonitions. One was that this customer was going to leave us, and that we'd potentially be bankrupt, and we'd be saying goodbye to our employees. And what does that look like? That scared the living daylights out of me. And then I had this premonition that something was going to happen to the world, something cataclysmic. And I thought it was maybe an asteroid or something. And I thought we were all doomed anyway. It turned out being COVID, I guess. But
you're not far off.
Those 2 things all really came to fruition within 4 months of these premonitions. So, I think, I don't encourage people to take time off like that.
Don't rent cottages.
Do not go to the cottage.
No, it's a double-edged sword. It can, but I got to a point where I was running so hard, and I'd seen a friend of mine take her life, and that was devastating to our whole family. And one thing led to another, and I think similar to electrical outlet, a panel. Sorry, I just had way too many things plugged into a system that couldn't support it any longer, and I broke down.
When people were asking your wife, for example, like, how's Peter doing it? How's he keep going? Were you asking yourself that same question, or were you just so far in that you didn't even have?
I was avoiding it.
Right. Did you know you were avoiding it?
Yeah, I knew I was avoiding it.
Okay.
I knew I was going hard, and I thought if I stop and think about it, I'm gonna fall.
Right.
I'd been on such a great run. I mean, everything I was doing, whether it was mentoring aspiring food entrepreneurs, it was working with one of two different charitable groups that I work with, trying to be dad, trying to be that guy, who's the hero for everything. It was just I didn't think I could stop.
Right.
And it was fun. I was enjoying it.
And when did you give yourself permission to stop?
Oh, well, I mean, I by the second week of September 2019, I had to. I couldn't. Everything was stopped anyway. It just I stopped myself, and I had a full breakdown.
Right.
I was barely. We sold our home. We gave away probably an eighth of everything we owned. I just couldn't stand to look at it anymore. We sold a car. We gave and sold away all sorts of stuff. Just fire sailed everything. And my wife actually went out and bought our new downsized home. I don't remember it. I didn't even go see it. So I could barely process anything. I was on the couch, dark for months. Right.
And what drew you out of that? Or I'm presuming you've been drawn out of it. I don't.
Yeah, I think everyone hits rock bottom in different stages that they may go through. In tough times, you hit bottom. I mean, Alon, you referenced something earlier, and for me, it was this notion of people, all of us at some point in time, we develop a new sense of ourselves or a deeper understanding of ourselves when we. You mentioned going that last, a couple of miles or so. For me, it's when we reach it, when we have to look down into that deep, dark chasm, and it can be scary as hell, but it's transformative. And so for me, one morning I woke up and I wanted to end my life. And I on a Saturday morning, went down to the basement and checked through my insurance papers to make sure everything was in order and my family would be taken care of. And I grabbed a sort of a rope type thing to put around my neck, and I walked around 3 different parts of my basement and tied myself up. And as I was sitting there wondering what the hell and crying, I thought about this friend of mine who'd taken her life and what the devastating effect of it was. And something I like to think it was her, to be honest with you. And I just lay down and cried and knew I couldn't carry on like this. It was too painful.
Right. So. Yeah, it's been my experience anyway, that when there's something that when I read this in the article, how you sat at the funeral and you're like, how could she do this? Like, how could this, if I read that correctly?
You did completely.
Yeah. And it's been my experience that when I don't understand the position somebody else is in, and usually it's something serious, the universe has a way of presenting me with that kind of opportunity to learn what that person might be going through. And so I'm presented with a similar situation to be able to go through to then empathize. So when you're at that point of, okay, I want to end it, there was obviously I think anyway, probably some kind of divine intervention, whether it was her or something coming in and going, hey, wait a second here. Perhaps I was there to help you learn as opposed to help you follow my path, so to speak.
What you went through, and we won't dig too much into this, so we will move on. I just want to say that you dealt with so many. When you deal with something with your kid, your child, it takes you down. And then you had several, and business, and I so understand that connection with, what if tomorrow the business doesn't exist? I almost live life sometimes not knowing if the business will be tomorrow, and it may have been an exaggerated or negative perspective from my part, or reality, or a little of both, or it doesn't matter at the end of the day, because we don't know what tomorrow will bring. But my mind went there almost daily, and it was good for the business sometimes, because we push, grow. But then there's a cost, right? There's the price we pay. And I kind of wanted to drop this. I don't want to go in deep into it, but we have a daughter who's on the spectrum, who's 16 and a half. And the lows we had at Sick Kids for 2 or 3 years. I can't even imagine. Like I'm sure you recognize we've spent months in certain wards, in the psychiatric ward also before she was diagnosed, and they were the most horrible days of my life. So I really empathize, and they're true angels who work there, like really.
Yeah, they are. They're
Anyways,
amazing people.
yeah, I kind of move away from this because this makes me a little emotional, and yeah.
I
Sorry.
hear you, brother.
Yeah.
No, don't never apologize. Gosh, it's
I know it's
you wouldn't be who you were if you weren't
I
emotional.
let go now. I embrace tears and I embrace feelings. Before, I noticed you did it a little, but you don't. I think I used to use a lot of humor. I still use humor as a way to get out of things or to deflect. Now I use humor just because I enjoy it, but I'm really being careful not to use it when I'm emotional. Just let it be, right?
Well, I feel like I've done and I've done a lot of crying in the last year and a half, and not that I'm trying to move away from it, but it can be taxing, as well.
So does the future, you can look back at the past year now, right? You're talking about it and you seem great, you seem fine. I mean, obviously you have emotions about it, but you seem strong.
Yeah, and I feel strong. I feel I will also say I feel different than I did 2 years ago. I'm aware of it, and I try to be mindful of it, and the fact that it could happen again. And I'm still on antidepressants, something I never thought I'd ever say in my life. I haven't called my therapist in a while, although I treasure him. He was an important part, a really incredibly important part of me getting beyond where I was at and becoming unstuck. And but no, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling more and more grateful, as life goes on, and there's that expression, he who is rich, let's use they who are rich are content with what they have, right? And that's such an important expression, I think, right? Because you mentioned earlier, we want more, and we're go. And I'm trying to be more mindful of that too, and trying to be more content with what I do have. I still need a bit of a carrot out in front to carry on. I think we all do. We need to set goals and we need to move forward, but they've been adjusted to what they maybe were at the height of my goal setting a few years ago. So not to say I've lowered them, I've just changed them.
Yeah, actually, it's probably your system was overloaded. You're probably not listening to signs that were being sent earlier. I know I didn't listen to signs until I couldn't ignore them anymore. Do you see now how do you see the future, like in terms of the company and yourself? Are you still working with Neal Brothers? Are you going to go back? Are you taking a sabbatical now?
To be honest, I think over the last few months, we've been living up at this fixer-upper cottage we bought last year, and I've had 5 months up here, and I've had only a couple times in the office. I mean, I wasn't the one to be in the office during the 18 months of COVID anyway, so it's a good question. We've just launched a new coffee called Crank Coffee Co., and I'm super excited. I absolutely love coffee. I love the industry. I love so much about what we've created, and so I'm cranked up, if you will, and looking forward to building that. So I think once we get back to normal, I'll be spending a little more time in the office or with our team. But I like to see some changes, and I think we'll have some more positive changes with the business, and a little less hands-on for Chris and I, and more power in the hands of our employees, and that feels good for them and feels good for us. So it's we've never been autocratic in the way we run the business, and neither of us are control freaks. And so we've, to almost to a fault, we've given a lot of autonomy to our employees. I think they'd like a little more structure, and so I think maybe at some point in time we'll Chris and I'll step back a little bit, bring someone in who is maybe more of a good coach and a good leader, and help our employees be better and feel more valued or more rewarded, but yeah, we're changing some things up with the business. So
Are you guys acting CEOs now or co-CEOs?
yeah, I mean, we've never really had a title. We're both actually called CSOs, Chief Snacking Officers.
I can see a roasting machine up where you are, and start roasting. I love coffee too. It's so funny you said there's so many parallels here. I once went to Portland for a 10-day barista course. I discovered that it's harder than it looks, and that I cannot make hearts in in lattes. Maybe a kidney or a kidney stone, but not a heart.
That's a talent.
That is a talent. It's you say you're an artist, and then you're not confined by how things need to look. So that's how I try to get away with things.
Yeah, well, I'd be very abstract myself, so that's okay.
Yeah. So in 5 years, do you have a vision of where you're at in terms of Neal Brothers and yourself? I mean, you mentioned a little now, but if you could take it a little further. Crank Coffee is...
I think Crank Coffee would be, right across the country, maybe into the US. It'll be a brand that resonates with people because of what it stands for. A really good cup of coffee that supports Community Food Centers Canada, that supports young cycling and the active outdoors, and a really good Canadian roasted local coffee brand. I'd like to see that as a major success, and that's a big part of it. I'd like to see our team at Neal Brothers, more and more engaged and feeling, really good about what they do under the curation of a new set of leaders, and Neal Brothers really continue to build beyond what it is. I think my brother and I'm fairly proud of what my brother and I have built, but at a certain point in time, you look into what your superpowers are, or what your tool belt's full of, and what's missing, and we know where our deficiencies are, and I don't think it's fair to our employees that we try to continue to grow this beyond what it is. I think we've got it to a good spot, but it needs to go beyond.
I think the sign of a good leader is them knowing their strengths and weaknesses, especially their weaknesses, and then covering for them. And also the skill set of entrepreneurs is not necessarily good for building a company. You're good at starting it, getting it, implanting values, but then you have to be systems oriented and manage things, and it's rare to have both. Yeah.
And we've got some, but we don't have all of it. We recognize that. So
yeah,
I don't know if that means I'm a good leader or not, but I'm certainly cognizant of my shortcomings, and I would never ever lose sight of and not be proud of what we've built, because I am happy with what we have and happy with what life is all about.
Cool. I wanted to circle back for a second, just regarding your alcohol-free beer. And I never thought I'd be a consumer of alcohol-free beer. I mocked people often. No, I'm not joking. And I didn't understand why anybody would not be, but I like the flavor of beer so much. And you know what happened? I don't know if it's aging. I'm 52, and I'd say in my mid 30s or 40s, my moods began to notice correlation between what I consume and how I feel. And for me, I was in Portland and discovering coffee and all the IPA beers. And I started drinking only IPA beers. And then at 3 a.m., I'd wake up with a cold sweat and fear in my heart. I was like, but horrible. Like it was a nightmare machine, wakes you up with a jolt of electricity. And I began to notice that it happened mostly when I had IPA beers. And now, so I stopped drinking a bunch of drinks, including certain red wines, etc. And I realized that either the hops or I don't know what is causing this. So I started drinking also less alcohol and and avoiding a bunch of beers. So it was so interesting to see that correlation between what I drink and eat versus my mood and mental well-being.
It's powerful.
You do not drink at all now?
No, I do. In fact, during COVID, I think like a lot of people, I did a 2 months abstinence, but there's been times when I've been, I think challenged by the lack of sociability, socialization, the lack of feeling purpose of being in the office every day. 30 years of getting up at 5 or 6 in the morning, going to the gym, going to the office, feeling accomplished, and then day's over. And then suddenly, I'm in four walls. I'm with my wife and my kids, and I think suddenly that glass of whatever looked really good, and a second glass and a third glass. So I've been up and down, and I think it's justifiable. Obviously, just we are in the greatest socialization or social sort of experiment in our generation. But the one thing I have done is I do absolutely love this new dealcoholized beer we have. It was created by a friend of mine. He invested in the technology, and it really creates a very unique and different style of beer through the process, right? It's not boiled off water. It's not, arrested fermentation. It's a real beer, and this ability to remove the alcohol molecule. So you've really got a great tasting beer. And so, but I will, reach, maybe it's, 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, I'll reach into the fridge and say, I think I need a de-alc version. I think I need a bit of a pacer, and I'll do 2 or 3 of those and call it a night. So it's, and that means I can get up at 6:30 and go play tennis, which I like to do in the morning. So
no, it's definitely part of it's in our fridge, and it's not the only thing we drink, but it's I have it a couple times a week almost.
Thank you.
So Liza, anything?
I'm with you.
Yes, great.
Wow, that was I was thrown off there. So yes, I'm back. Sorry for missing that, guys. I did hear most of it. I just couldn't participate in any of it. So
do you want to throw in a couple more questions, because we're close to time?
Yes. Well, I just wanted to, Pete, so we always like to talk about the city a little bit, just because this is a Toronto-based show. And how do you see Toronto? Like, how have they been to work with in terms of, any kind of city work, or and just how you've enjoyed the city? And it's been obviously good to you. So I've always been a homer, whether it's cheering for a local Olympic athlete or a sports team at home in Toronto, and that really is at my heart. It's the place we've chosen to live, and over the years growing up, watching Toronto grow up in front of us, really, right? It's had the biggest changes over the last 30, 40 years than it has over hundreds of years, I guess. But it's I love the city. Like the rest of Canada, I love the multicultural fabric. I like the fact that it's for the most part pretty inclusionary, and I think we've got an amazing mayor who continues to do great things in the city. Our transportation, I think people can cry about it a lot and complain about it a lot, but finally we're starting to see some new strides in transportation, bike lanes. I think we've got some of the most incredible, diverse restaurants and entertainment. My wife and I are huge music lovers. I'm so excited, being a fan and supporter of Massey Hall for years, and to see them opening back up. I've bought almost every concert that they had available in the next 8 months, because I'm just dying. It's like pent up demand, right? It's like, we've got to buy, we got to support, we got to go. So there's so much. I mean, I do love so much of what Toronto has to offer. I'm a huge food lover. I've got a lot of friends in the industry. I'm sure, like Alain, you've got dozens of chefs and restaurants, and it's been sad to see some of them hit. But I'm excited to get back into city life, and get back into non-COVID times, and really embrace everything the city has to offer. It's I think we're fortunate. We've got it's a gateway to so many other great places in the world as well, and it's easy to get in and out of. And it's got I think a lot of people don't realize that Toronto has really more green space per capita than any major city in North America. A lot of it's relegated to ravines, and Right.
A lot of people don't go looking for that, right? They stay surface level and they stay pavement and concrete and think that's what we have. But it really is, what's the motto? A park within a city, or a city within a park, sorry. And it is. It's if you get out and have a look around us, and you see the changes to the environment, and the streams and rivers getting healthier, and I think there's an amazingly great positive future for our city.
Right. What is your favorite neighborhood in the city?
Favorite neighborhood. I honestly don't know if I could even go there. We've moved from Leaside, which I thought was an amazing community, to the North Toronto, or around Yonge and Lawrence area of Toronto, and loving that. They've all got access to great parks. I mean, the West End, where my wife grew up, around High Park, it's got such a great mix of restaurants and shops, and we've got Cheese Boutique and great parks out in that end of the city, and some of these other areas that have started popping up. Really, we're starting to define and name those parts of the city that I don't think we did for years and years, right? Whether it's Liberty or Distillery, and Cabbagetown's always been a fun, quirky neighborhood. I love lots of buddies down in Cabbagetown, and it's always fun to browse through a fancy neighborhood like a Rosedale or Forest Hill, and just look in awe at the crazy beautiful architecture. But there's so many great cities. Danforth is so vibrant as well.
Okay,
so
two more questions.
All. Yes.
2 more questions, just because I know we're short on time, but I have to ask, because you were talking about Crank Coffee Company and you're really excited about that venture. What is your favorite coffee shop, or maybe one of your top 3, or top, one of the coffee shops that's in your top 3 list of coffee shops in the city?
Well, I'll name a couple for sure. Actually, there's a new one very close to my neighborhood. It's an Israeli group. It's called Land. Do you know the one I'm talking about?
Landver. Cafe Landver.
Wow.
Yeah.
Love it. It feels like you're on a Parisian cafe. I mean, they're really super friendly. Their shakshuka is amazing. Their coffees are great. But I'd have to go back to probably certainly there'd be 2 or 3 Balzacs in the city. The one in the original one in Distillery, the one in Liberty is great. So there's 2 of those neighborhoods we talked about, right? So what does that tell us? Good coffee shops and good experiences help to make and to define those neighborhoods, right? We all need those places to gather, and but those are some of my favorite shops for sure. Great coffee, great people behind them, and just a really unique experience, right? Like a true cafe.
When I go to a foreign city and I look for the cool coffee shops, and lo and behold, they're in the coolest neighborhoods. Some of them I may get robbed also, but it gives you the good experience.
I have been in some of those cities for sure. Yeah. Paris and Barcelona.
So we're going to wrap up, but my just a final question we always like to ask is, what charity is close to your heart? I mean, I've seen on your website you are involved with so many different organizations, but is there one or 2 that are specifically close to your heart?
Well, I do tend to lean left, and I believe any neighborhood, any community, any country, any city, it is better when there's more fairness, more shared. I'm trying to think of the word, and I apologize, but I think more equity, and Nick Saul at Community Food Centers Canada has strived to do this for years across Canada by building community food centers, places in the proud to walk in, feel welcomed, get a really good meal cooked and served to them, and in doing so and breaking bread together, figure out ways to improve their lives, whether it's through landlord tenant act, or whether it's better food and cooking. We get a lot of people from different parts of the world come in, and they have no idea what to do with certain fruits and vegetables that might be at stores. So showing them how to eat healthy and eat inexpensively. So community food centers do a lot of things, and they are helping to make communities more vibrant, stronger, more inclusionary, and so community food centers being a big part. And then, there would be two others. One of them is definitely mental health now, and I'll be continuing to advocate and work on behalf of with Family Navigation Project in Toronto. I'm an advisor, as well as Pine River Institute. And we've got a niece with diabetes, so juvenile diabetes is up there as well. Those three are probably our tops.
Okay, wonderful. Well, it's been such a pleasure.
Pete, thank you.
It was in and out, but yeah,
that was really nice to chat with you guys, and Alon, to hear more about your story and what's happened more recently and to see that huge smile on your face.
So
That's
Pete,
good.
so first of all, I'll wrap it up by thanking you really so much for coming. I feel I know you more than I do, and now even I think a little better. And thank you for opening up. I think everybody benefits from everyone opening up rather than building walls around us. This is who we are, and it actually creates strength. And we're strong as the weakest links, and let's strengthen the weakest links. And I share that kind of sense of community with you. I really love to hear what you say. I live in Regent Park because of that. I want to see around me diversity. Sometimes you see a little too much pain, but that's what it is. So it's kind of a daily reminder. So really thank you for joining us. We should get together. I think we have a common friend, Jen. She used to be at Richmond Station.
Oh gosh, really?
So your name came up, and she's, he's the nicest guy. We have to go. So you don't know this, but we have a triple date at Bar Neon, the Bar Neon patio. I know you've been there.
Let's do it.
Yes. So that's to come. So really thank you.
October.
And we appreciate your time.
October, November. And thank you. It was an honor. I do feel privileged and honored that you asked me to speak and share today. So thank you.
Thank you.
And we just want to end with where people can find you, like how can they find your products? Where can they find your products? Anything you want to? Yeah.
So, I appreciate the Neal brother love, or the Neal bros love for the beer, Elon. And all of our products are available at a whole host of the usual suspects across Canada, those natural specialty stores. Some of our products are in some of the larger chains right across the country as well. And then we also launched a new e-commerce site in the last few months. So we've got an e-commerce where any of those items, including our crank coffee, can be purchased. So I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We'll include these details in the show notes, but it's always good to hear you say it as well. Yeah. So thanks very much.
Thank you. And I was telling Alana off air, just the minute you started talking, I was brought back to one of my favorite shows, Frasier with Roz.
No way.
You're Roz. Yeah.
I will take that compliment.
It is a sexy voice.
Thank you.
And we're wrapping up.
You're going to make me blush. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Have an awesome
thanks.
The Upfront Toronto podcast.